2020 election dealt with many of the same issues we debate each cycle. Tax policy, healthcare, public safety, big issues, important issues, but there was something else that got a lot of attention this year, even though most of us rarely think about it. The post office. The global pandemic has increased online purchases, prescription mailers, and political mailers on top of our normal deliveries. Tough for an organization which lost $9 billion in 2019, leading many to call for its privatization. NPR on August 21st, 2020 reports that U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy came under fire when he suggested that the post office remove hundreds of postal sorting machines and eliminate essential overtime hours. President Trump, who appointed DeJoy, praised the decision, admitting that it would hamper mail-in ballot efforts, while critics immediately accused DeJoy of attempting to unfairly influence the election. And now that those mail-in ballots help determine our next commander-in-chief, the U.S. Post Office may just be one of the most crucial institutions of 2021. If we are going to make sound decisions, we need to know more. So today, let's dive into the origins of the United States Post Office, then examine its unique business model before finally taking a step back and looking at what this all means for the future. To properly get an idea for how the post office is important to us today, we need to understand how and why it was created in the first place. Well, it turns out that America didn't create the post office. The post office created America. Winifred Gallagher, author of the aptly titled book How the Post Office Created America, a History, explains that the post office was essential for uniting the colonies. During the 1770s, sending messages of the Revolution via the Crown's Post without it being intercepted was nearly impossible. In 1774, Benjamin Franklin, along with other founding fathers, created the Constitutional Post to send information, mostly newspapers, across the colonies, uniting them with the political ideas of liberty and freedom. The September 2020 issue of Smithsonian Magazine goes on to explain that before we had a Declaration of Independence or fought the Revolution, before there was a Constitution, Americans had the post. In 1792, the Post Office Act was passed, which created new routes to reach more people and mandated that newspapers be mailed at the same low rate, causing a boom in newspaper organizations from more sides of the political spectrum. While that might not seem like a big deal, these newspapers were sometimes the only way that people could get information. But at this point, the post office was still a long way from where it is today. Up until the 1860s, people would still have to go into town to pick up their mail at the post office. Home delivery wasn't introduced until the middle of the Civil War, when postmasters agreed that families should be able to receive their news, which was usually the death of a loved one, at home. National Geographic on May 18, 2020 explains that delivering the mail only expanded from here. In the early 20th century, Congress labeled the Postal Service as a universal service obligation, which basically means that home-delivered mail was something everyone deserves to get. By 1913, parcel service was an official post office product. Nearly 3 million packages were sent within the first 6 months of this service being offered. Kinda sounds like the post office we know today. So now that we understand the origins of the post office, it's time to take a look at its unique business model. To do this, we need to understand two things: where money comes from and where it goes. First, where it comes from. The Brookings Institute on August 26, 2020 reported something rather surprising. The United States Post Office is not funded by the United States. In fact, it's been this way since 1970, when Congress passed the Postal Reorganization Act. This changed the Post Office Department from a government-run agency to a government-owned business. Business Insider on August 14, 2020 explains that it receives no taxpayer dollars and relies strictly on the revenue generated from first-class mail and package delivery. And in the last couple of decades, that revenue has been going down significantly, With people switching from written letters to text messages and emails, the services of the post office declined drastically with the advent of mobile electronic devices, otherwise known as our phones and laptops. The post office was hit especially hard after the 2008 recession, and demand for most of their major services never came back. In addition to this, they're spending money faster than they can make it. The Washington Post on August 15th, 2020, reports that since the 2006 Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, which provides prepaid health and retirement benefits to workers, the post office has been steadily losing money. At the end of 2019, they were $160.9 billion in debt, with over $119 billion due to retiree benefits. With less money coming in and money going out constantly, the post office is in serious financial trouble. So now that we understand both the origins and money troubles of the U.S. Post Office, it's time to take a step back and look at the options the post office has for the future. In that, they have two main options: stay the current course or go private. First, the post office does have the option of mostly staying the same. Right now, the post office does deliver, both literally and figuratively. They provide the services asked of them at the same low rate across the nation. That low rate, however, is exactly why the USPS is struggling. Forbes of April 1st, 2020 reports that companies such as FedEx depend on the post office to deliver about a third of their packages, especially in rural areas where they haven't invested in their own last mile network. Because they're a government-owned business, raising postal rates to cover costs has been discouraged for fear of public backlash. The week of February 11th, 2020 reports that reformers are suggesting ending the mandatory payments towards the health benefits of future retirees. Another part of the solution would be to allow the post office to offer a public option for basic banking services, a move that would both bring in new revenue and give low-income Americans an alternative to predatory lenders. Lawmakers could also just return the post office to its pre-1970 incarnation as a straightforward government-funded public service. The other option goes in the other direction: privatization. Chris Edwards of the Cato Institute in the fall of 2019 noted some of the benefits of a privately owned postal service. A private company would have the power to raise their prices to be competitive with other private companies. They could close low-volume post offices, easily raise prices for first-class mail, and set their own employee benefits. But privatization means that they aren't beholden to the idea of the public good. Nearly 600,000 people currently employed by the post office stand to lose their jobs in the name of cutting costs. Private postal services also don't have the delivery infrastructure in place to handle rural areas of America. An ironic twist for the department that was originally created to bring Americans together. But there is no denying that a private company would be far more flexible than a government-run agency. So whether Congress decides to go with a public or private option, one thing is for certain: change is on the horizon. Today we looked at the origins of the U.S. Post Office, its unique business model, and two different paths forward. The post office was created as a way to unite a scattered people into a nation, and almost 250 years later, the sustainability of that institution has come into question. I don't know what needs to be done, but as the Biden administration works to heal a divided country, it is clear that change is necessary. It's Darwin's theory of natural selection. If we do not adapt to change, the post office and the unity it brought to our nation